Hey everyone, today I'm creating some mini slimline cards using the Koala Smiles card kit from Spellbinders. I'm also using these slimline postage dies to create my cards today. Now, I decided to lay out a whole bunch of mini slimline cards so that I could just get into the feel of what I was going to create. I had no plan, no sketch. I was literally just going to layer up some of these pattern papers and just see what happens. I went through the pattern paper pack and basically found anything that was busy with lots of small flowers. I think there was one that is the eucalyptus leaves, but everything else is flowers. And these are not my typical design of cards. I'm not a floral person. There are lots of people who do love receiving them though, so you will see me make them pretty often. After I had picked my paper, I then grabbed all of the cardstock out of the kit and I ran everything through my die machine. You can see here that what I've done is I've done the postage stamp die, and then in the middle I've cut one of the slimline panels that's part of the set. This just meant that I could stretch the cardstock a little further and I'd be able to carry a bunch of cards that all matched in similar colour tones rather than having to dig further into my cardstock stash. At this point I really did have absolutely no plan, and I was just sorting things into the different piles. I tend to do things in bulk, so I'm quite used to laying things out across my desk and then just trying a few things out. And at this point, step one was to put the biggest slimline die cut across the mini slimline panels. So you can tell here that I do need to cut them down to make them fit, and I do that later on, but for the moment I'm just layering up all of the different panels of paper, and I've basically cut some white ones, some pattern paper, some solid cardstock in multiple sizes of the slimline dies. I never show using my die machine because it just doesn't seem to make any sense to show that. It's a big pile of stuff. I cut it up, I put it in piles, and then I come back to my desk to sort it out like this and just spread everything out. And you can see I'm fussing around a little bit. I'm layering up different color combinations, and once I'm happy, I then figure out, okay, my next step is figuring out how to add some of these amazing ephemera onto the top of the cards. There is so much in this card kit. I was absolutely flummoxed that there was so much in there. And because there's multiples, you can actually create multiple cards that are the same. So that did actually speed up the creative process for me. And I have trimmed out, when I edited this video, digging through the die cuts to find, the second sentiment or the second koala of a particular layout. Because the pattern paper is quite busy, I decided to put the ephemera on top of a panel or a circle or a square. So I went through my stash and I grabbed a few of my leftover supplies in particular shapes that I hoped would fit on a mini slimline card. So these pink squares, and there's some red ones, and then I've got these little white little rectangles. And so I'm using up my leftovers here and just finding combinations that fit and not thinking too much about it. Well, trying not to be honest. The ephemera that I ended up selecting, there was a lot of flowers and a lot of animals. So you will see koalas and you will see kangaroos. So I also selected sentiments that were quite generic. There's a lot of smile and hello and hi. And again, these are the types of cards that I create the most because I use them to donate, and it means that they're a bit more generic so they can be used by charities or other organisations really, really easily. Now that I've made up about 20 different cards, I'm going to show you how I cut down the panels that I created. I simply chop off one of the ends to get rid of the postage edge. And then I'm measuring this so that it is 6 inches long because my slimline cards are 6 1/4 by 3 1/4. So this means I'm going to have a nice white border around the edge that's 1/4 of an inch, and I can layer all of these up together and get a really, really nice card in the end. Because I had so many layers on this card, there's literally 4 pieces of cardstock and pattern paper. I tried a few different ways to cut down the panels. This was the first way that I did it, which was really just cutting down each one by one. And then when I glue them together, I literally use my ATG and I layer up all of the different components and then add it to the card base. As I started to progress a little bit further, I started to think of other ways that I could do it so that it wasn't just so fiddly when I actually put these things together and compile the cards. So you can see here, even this bit, and I am using this slimline die in an unusual way. And because I've chopped off the end, I'm being very careful to line up the really pretty postage stamp edge to make sure I've got a nice border. And then I'm putting a little piece of cardstock behind in the middle just so I don't have a noticeable dip on the card. It just means the next layer is going to sit up nice and flat. And by the time I add this on, you don't even notice that there's green on the left-hand side and no green on the right, because it's just a trim now, just across the top and across the bottom. So I add my next 2 layers onto the card, and then I start thinking about what am I going to do with the kangaroo to make sure that he stands out from the pretty busy pattern paper that I'm using on the top layer. And in the end, I decided it was worth adding a little bit more dimension to the card. So I decided to pop him up on some little foam tape squares. So I've attached the circle nice and flat, and then I've added the sentiment nice and flat. But when it came to the kangaroo, I just decided that to give it a little bit of shadow and lift it a little bit off from the pattern paper, a couple of these foam squares from my stash would work really well. Actually, these are not foam squares from my stash. These are foam squares that came in the card kit from Spellbinders. I don't really have too much foam left in my supplies, but this was handy because I do think it looks a little better with it sitting up off the card. If you're enjoying the video, it would be fantastic if you could hit the like button or maybe add a comment below. It shows YouTube that you're enjoying it and it helps it spread to more viewers. So thank you. This time I'm actually laying out the pattern paper before I cut it. So the reason that I did this is it just meant that it had a little bit more stability, and I didn't have to be as particular when I was putting the layers together because I knew I was going to get a nice clean line when I trimmed it down. I'm still putting extra cardstock in the middle, by the way, because I don't want it to have a noticeable dip. So all of those leftovers that I've thrown in a spare container that's at the top of the screen, they never get wasted. I try and use everything up so that I guess there's a few things and I throw them in my recycling bin, but I do try and keep all my leftovers and put them to really good use. By the way, if you're interested in this card kit, I will put a link in the description below. Spellbinders have some of their old card kits at 50% off, and this is one of them. So if you haven't used their card kits before, I do have a video, and again, I'll link that below, and maybe I'll put a link in the top right-hand corner of the unboxing of this card kit. It comes with a set of dies that cut out a really gorgeous koala and a branch, sort of a tree branch and some leaves. So you can add that to your cards and use it over and over and over again. It also has a stamp set in it as well, which I didn't actually use as part of this video. So you'll see all of the supplies if you check out the video. And I highly recommend this one. I've had fun with it so far, and I'm going to create some more videos as I use up more and more of the supplies. I feel like I could get loads and loads of cards, even just out of the paper pack on its own. Oh, and I'll put a link to the slimline dies. I do not make full slimline cards that are, I think, 8.5 inches long. I only do mini slimlines, but you can see that even just using them for these, super, super versatile, and you've got complete flex about whether or not you use the standard panels or whether you do the ones with the little postage edge, which I think adds quite a bit of interest. So I think I'm a fan. I think I'm going to use this more often. This last card is really pretty. I'm not really big on pink, but the flowers are gorgeous, and then I just love how this little vase of Banksias, I popped it up on some foam tape, and just with the little shadow, it really just pops off that pattern paper, and it came up looking really, really fantastic. So one of my favorites of the bunch that I made today, I think. I have put another video here that I think you might enjoy. Have a great day.